She had no idea the man standing across the room had buried 3 bodies last Tuesday. She had no idea his name alone made grown men stop breathing. She had no idea his daughter, a little girl with pigtails and candy-stained fingers, was about to walk up to her and change both their lives. All she knew was that her hair was freshly washed, her dress was fitted, and she was the only black woman in a room full of people who had never seen anything like her. And neither had he.
Welcome back to Afro-Korean Blooming Love Stories, where I script original Afro-Korean stories of love and healing. I am Naomi, the writer of today's story. I love it, babes, if you do me a favor by liking the video and subscribing to this channel. Now let's begin.
The Grand Meridian Hotel in Chicago sat right at the edge of the Gold Coast, like it owned the entire street, which it practically did. The annual Meridian Business Gala was the kind of event where every person in the room had a net worth that started at 8 figures, and every conversation had 2 layers to it. The first layer was business. The second was power. Adise walked in wearing a deep emerald green dress that sat off both shoulders, and her hair, her 4C hair, was everything. She had washed it 2 days before and spent the whole evening stretching and twisting and coiling it until it stood full and glorious from her head, cascading past her shoulders in a thick crown of natural spirals. She had debated pulling it back. She had almost flat-ironed it. Then she decided no. She was going as herself. She was a brand consultant, the kind who businesses flew in from Lagos to London to Chicago to fix whatever their image problem was. Tonight, she had been invited by a client, a tech company that wanted her visible and impressive in a room full of potential investors. She took a glass of sparkling water from a passing tray, smiled at the server, and stood near the tall windows overlooking the lake. The room was stunning. White tablecloths, string lights, a jazz quartet in the far corner. Men in tailored suits and women in gowns that cost more than small cars. Adise was comfortable here. She had done events like this in Abuja, in London, in Seoul, in New York. She knew how to stand in a room without disappearing. She was studying the crowd, identifying faces she recognized from her research, when she felt something small and warm press against her arm. She looked down. A little girl, maybe 5 or 6 years old, stood beside her. She was wearing a tiny white dress with a bow at the back, her dark hair pulled into 2 neat pigtails. Her eyes were big and curious and entirely fixed on Adise's hair. Adise looked around quickly to see if someone was chasing the child. No one seemed to notice. She had wandered away. "Hello," Adise said softly. The girl did not say hello back. Instead, she slowly lifted one small hand and touched the edge of Adise's hair, gently, the way you'd touch something you weren't sure was real. "I love your hair," she whispered. Adise felt her whole heart do something embarrassing. She crouched down so she was at eye level with the little girl. "Thank you, baby," she said. "What's your name?" "Sio Yan," the girl said, still touching the hair, her fingers disappearing into the thick coils. "It's so soft. And so big." "It is," Adise laughed quietly. "I worked really hard on it tonight." "It looks like a cloud," Sio Yan said. Then she looked at Adise's face very seriously. "Are you a princess?" "No," Adise said, pressing her lips together to keep from melting entirely. "But thank you for thinking so." Sio Yan considered this. "You look like one." Adise opened the small clutch at her side and fished around until she found what she was looking for. She pulled out a small Kit Kat bar, the kind she always kept because she had low moments at long events and needed something real. "Do you want this?" she said. Sio Yan's eyes went round. She looked over her shoulder like she was checking for someone, then she looked back and nodded furiously. Adise put it in her tiny hand. They sat there together for a moment, the little girl eating her Kit Kat and leaning against Adise's side like they had known each other for years. "Are you here with your mummy?" Adise asked. "No," Sio Yan said. "I'm here with Appa." "And where is Appa?" Sio Yan pointed across the room. Adise looked up. and then she stopped breathing. He was standing near the bar with two other men in suits, and he was the tallest person in the group, which was saying something because the men beside him were not small. He was wearing a charcoal suit that looked like it had been sewn onto his body, and his dark hair was pushed back from his face in a way that made his jaw look like something someone had carved out of intention. He was not young. He was the kind of man who was past young, who had lived in his face and was better for it, late 30s maybe, and every year of it sat well on him. But what made Adise's eyes stay on him was the tattoo. It started just below his left ear and disappeared below his collar. Navy ink, precise lines, the kind of tattoo that was not decorative. It was a statement. He had something to say, and he had chosen to say it on his skin where everyone could see it. He was listening to the man beside him speak, and he was nodding, but his eyes were moving slowly across the room the way eyes do when you are listening, but also always watching. Not nervous watching. Protective watching. He was beautiful. And Adise, who had grown up watching Korean dramas since she was 12 years old in her auntie's sitting room in Enugu, who had developed a very educated appreciation for Korean men and their particular brand of contained intensity, felt something move in her chest that she had not felt in a while. "That's your appa," she said. "Yes," Sio Yan said proudly. "His name is Eunwoo." Adise nodded slowly. "He's very handsome." Sio Yan looked up at her. "He doesn't have a girlfriend," she said. Adise blinked. "Okay. I asked him last week," Sio Yan continued, as though this were a completely normal thing to be reporting. "He said he doesn't have time for a girlfriend. But I think he's lying. I think he just hasn't found the right one." Adise stared at this child who was 6 years old and apparently running a matchmaking operation. "You think so?" she said. "Yes." Sio Yan looked at her very seriously. "You would be good with my appa." Adise laughed, and it came out louder than she meant. A couple near them looked over. She covered her mouth. "You are very direct," she told Sio Yan. "Appa says being direct is a good thing," Sio Yan said simply. Adise stood up and took the girl's hand. "Come on. Let me take you back to your appa before he thinks you got kidnapped." They walked across the room together, and Adise kept her chin up because she was a professional and she was walking a child back to her father at a business event, and there was nothing unusual about this. Eunwoo saw his daughter before he saw Adise. His expression changed immediately. Not panic, but something shifted behind his eyes, something that said the only thing in the room he actually cared about was that small person. He said something quick to the men he was with and moved toward them. He crouched down to Sio Yan's height. "Yeah," he said in a low voice. Not angry. More like a man who had had this conversation before. "Where did you go?" "I was talking," Sio Yan said. "You can't just walk away like that." "I was safe. I was with her." Sio Yan pointed up at Adise. Eunwoo straightened up. He looked at Adise for the first time, and it was the kind of look that was polite because he was in public and not because he was especially interested. He nodded once. "Thank you," he said. His English was clean and precise, a slight accent, the kind that came from someone who had learned the language thoroughly rather than casually. "She wanders." "She's lovely," Adise said warmly. "We had a very serious conversation." He almost smiled. Not quite, but almost. Sio Yan tugged Adise's hand. "Appa, her hair is a cloud." "I see that," he said, and the way he said it was neutral, not rude, just a man saying words. Adise looked at the tattoo on his neck. Up close it was more detailed than she'd realized. Navy symbols, coordinates maybe, and a small anchor near the base. "Is that a Navy tattoo?" she said. Something shifted in his expression. He did not answer immediately. Then he said, "Yes. I have one too," she said. She tapped the inside of her left wrist, where a small tattoo of the nativity symbol for love sat in dark ink. Not military, but still permanent. He glanced at her wrist. Then he looked at her face again, and this time the look was a fraction longer than the first one. She opened her clutch and pulled out a card. A clean white card with her name, her title, and her number in simple black font. She held it out to him. "Call me if you're not single," she said. He took the card, looked at it, then looked at her with an expression she couldn't fully read, something between surprised and something else. "I said what I said," she added pleasantly, and looked down at Sio Yan. "Goodbye, Cloud Inspector." Sio Yan threw her arms around Adise's waist in a hug that nearly knocked her sideways. Then she let go and waved. Adise walked away. Behind her, Sio Yan looked up at her father. "Appa. Call her." He looked down at the card. He put it in his breast pocket. 3 weeks later, there was an incident. It was not the kind of incident that made the news, because the kind of men who moved around did not make news unless they wanted to. 2 shipments had been intercepted. A partner in Detroit had gone quiet in a way that meant he was either dead or cooperating with someone he should not be cooperating with. Eunwoo spent 14 days barely sleeping, moving between meetings and phone calls and a warehouse in Bridgeport where the air smelled like damp concrete and old decisions. The card stayed in his breast pocket through all of it. He moved it from suit to suit because he told himself it was just there, not because he was keeping it, not because he had thought about the woman more than once. Then the Detroit situation resolved in the worst possible way, and for the next several months Eunwoo was in cleanup mode, and the card eventually made it to the inside of his nightstand drawer, under a watch he never wore, and he did not look at it again. A year passed. It passed the way hard years pass, which is to say it did not feel like a year. It felt like a series of problems that got replaced by other problems, and somewhere in the middle of it Sio Yan lost her first tooth and cried because it scared her. And Eunwoo sat on the bathroom floor with her for 40 minutes explaining what teeth do and why losing them was actually good news. He made her a small ceremony out of it, put the tooth in a little box, told her the tooth fairy in Chicago was known for being generous, and slipped $20 under her pillow that night. He was not a cold man. He had never been a cold man. He was a man who had inherited a life he had not chosen and was managing it carefully while working, quietly and at enormous personal risk, toward the day he could end it. The Navy tattoo was not decorative. He had served. He had left the service officially. He had never actually left the service in the way that mattered, which was that he was still feeding information, still coordinating, still working toward a moment when everything he knew about the organization his father had built could be handed over in a way that dismantled it cleanly without getting anyone he loved killed. It was slow work. It was the kind of work that required patience he sometimes didn't have and composure he had spent years building. He did not have time for a girlfriend. He had said it to Sio Yan and he had meant it. He said it to himself in the mirror in the mornings and he mostly believed it. But one evening he was sitting in his home office, which looked out over the Chicago skyline from the 42nd floor, and he was going through his nightstand for the watch, because he had a meeting in the morning and the watch was part of the uniform, and his hand found the card. He stopped. He sat down on the edge of the bed and looked at it. Adise Nwosu, brand consultant, and the number. He thought about the way she had walked across that room with his daughter's hand in hers, not dragging her, not hurried, just walking with her like it was the most natural thing. He thought about the way she had looked at his tattoo, with actual recognition rather than performance. He thought about the card. Call me if you're not single. He had not been called out like that in a long time. Possibly ever. He turned the card over. Nothing on the back. He put it on his nightstand where he could see it. He did not call that night. But he did not put it back in the drawer. The next morning, Sio Yan came padding into his room the way she did every Saturday, in her pajamas with the small bears on them, and climbed up onto the bed and settled against his side. She saw the card. Appa, she said immediately. Is that her card? He looked at the ceiling. Go to sleep. You kept it, Sio Yan said, with the satisfaction of someone who had been right about something all along. I knew you kept it. It means nothing, he said. Sio Yan picked up the card, read the name the way a 6-year-old reads, slowly and bisyllable. Adise, she said. Pretty name. She put the card back down. Call her Appa. You're 6. So? He looked at her sideways. Go. Watch your cartoons. Sio Yan slid off the bed importantly. At the door, she turned around. I'm just saying. She said you were very handsome. And she gave me Kit Kat. That has nothing to do with anything. It has everything to do with everything, Sio Yan said, and left. Eunwoo stared at the card for a long moment. He picked up his phone. He typed the number in. He saved it. He did not call it. He told himself he was just saving it. But he saved it under her name, Adise. And he looked at it twice more before he put the phone down. 2 weeks later, he called. It was a Tuesday evening. Sio Yan was at her art class that she took every Tuesday at a studio 3 blocks from their building, and his driver took her and stayed with her, so Eunwoo had an hour and 12 minutes of silence in his apartment. He poured himself a glass of water, stood at the kitchen counter, and called the number. It rang 3 times. Hello. Her voice was warm and direct and immediately recognizable even though he had spoken to her for approximately 4 minutes total in his entire life. This is Eunwoo, he said. A pause. Not a surprised pause. More like a pause where someone was smiling. It's been a year, she said. I know. Did something happen, or did you just take a very long time to decide? He was quiet for a moment. Both, he said honestly. She laughed. It was the same laugh from the gala, the one that came out too loud and real for a formal room. Okay, she said. I respect that. How is the cloud inspector? Something in his chest moved. She's well. She asks about you. She does? She brought you up 4 times in the last year, he said. Approximately once every 3 months. She's very serious about her matchmaking. She is. He paused. How are you? Good. I just got back from London 3 days ago. Working on a campaign. You travel a lot. It's the job. Chicago is home, though. A pause. Where are you calling from? Home. My daughter's at art class. Tuesday nights, she said. I love that she does art. What kind? Mostly abstract things. Last week she painted something and told me it was a horse, and I looked at it for a long time trying to find the horse. Adise laughed again. Did you find it? Eventually. There was a brown part near the bottom. That was definitely a horse. That's what I told her. They talked for 37 minutes. It started with Sio Yan and moved to Chicago and then to her work and then to his, which he talked about in general terms because that was the only way he could, and she did not push. She asked smart questions. She had a way of listening that made you feel heard without pressure, and when she disagreed with something he said, which she did twice, she said it plainly without making it a production. When he hung up, he sat at the counter for a moment and looked at the wall. Then he called back. Hello, she said, clearly confused. I wanted to ask you something, he said. Okay. Would you have dinner with us? Me and Sio Yan. A pause. Not just you. She should be there, he said. She earned it. Adise was quiet for a moment. That might be the most thoughtful thing anyone has ever said to me about a first meeting, she said softly. Is that a yes? Yes, she said. That's a yes. They had dinner that Saturday at a Korean restaurant in Koreatown that Eunwoo liked because the owner had known his family for decades and nobody asked questions or took pictures. He got them a corner booth with a low table and cushioned seats, and Sio Yan spent the entire car ride asking if they were almost there. Adise was already there when they arrived, sitting in the booth, wearing a yellow top and her hair pulled up in a puff that was almost as large as the one from the gala. She was reading the menu with the seriousness of someone who is taking the occasion seriously. Sio Yan saw her and ran. Adise opened her arms and caught the girl like they had been doing this for years. There she is, she said. My cloud inspector. I told Appa to call you, Sio Yan announced loudly, settling into the booth beside her. He waited 1 whole year. I know, Adise said, looking at Eun-woo as he slid into the seat across from them with the calm of a man who is not going to apologize for his timeline. I was busy, he said. He was very busy, Sio Yan confirmed helpfully. Adise looked at him for a moment, and there was something in her eyes that was warm and easy and not at all intimidated, and he felt that same thing he had felt when she'd handed him the card. That sense of being caught off guard by someone who was exactly what she appeared to be. I ordered water and the spicy tofu, she said, returning to the menu. Is that a good choice? It's a very good choice, he said. Also, she said, looking up, your daughter is going to order the dumplings, I can tell. Sio Yan's head whipped around. How did you know? Wild guess, Adise said, and winked. Sio Yan looked at her appa with an expression that said, I like her very much. He looked at the menu so Sio Yan would not see his face. The dinner was easy in a way that surprised him. He had not had easy in a long time. She told them about her last trip to London, doing an impression of a client who had wanted his logo redesigned 47 times, which made Sio Yan fall sideways laughing. Sio Yan told her about the horse painting in great detail, explaining exactly where the horse was and why its legs were on top instead of the bottom, because that was the direction the horse wanted to stand. Adise listened to Sio Yan the way adults rarely listen to children, which is to say she listened completely, without waiting for her turn to speak, without half attention. Eun-woo watched this. He ate his food and he watched this, and he felt something quiet and dangerous happening inside his chest that he was not yet ready to name. After dinner, they walked down the block because Sio Yan wanted to look at the lights in the shop windows, and Eun-woo walked on the outside of the pavement automatically, the way he always did, and Adise noticed. You always walk on the outside, she said. Habit, he said. Navy habit or personal habit? He looked at her sideways. You remembered that? You had a navy tattoo and you said yes, like it cost you something, she said simply. It stayed with me. He was quiet for a moment. Personal habit, he said. But it started in the Navy. She nodded and did not push, and he was grateful for that in a way he did not say out loud. Sio Yan stopped in front of a toy store and pressed her nose against the glass. Appa, she said. Look at that rabbit. No, he said. I'm just looking. You're not just looking. You're planning. I'm looking, she insisted. Adise looked at the rabbit in the window. It was enormous and very, very pink. She looked at Eun-woo. He was already looking at the rabbit the way a man looks at something he knows he is going to end up buying. Don't, she said quietly to him. I'm not going to, he said. Good. 2 minutes later, he was inside the store paying for the rabbit. Sio Yan named it Chicago. She carried it home with both arms and her chin on its head, and she told it everything about the evening in a running whisper the whole ride back. Adise sat beside Sio Yan in the back seat, and Eun-woo sat in the front, and through the rearview mirror, he watched Adise helping Sio Yan arrange the rabbit's ears, both of them completely absorbed in the task. Something had started. He could feel it the way you feel weather changing, something in the air that was not there before. He did not try to stop it. Several weeks passed, and they fell into something that did not have a name yet but had a shape. He called her on Tuesday evenings while Sio Yan was at art class. She called him on Sunday mornings when she was cooking, just to talk, and she did not seem to need the calls to go anywhere specific, which he found restful. He was not a man who spoke a lot for its own sake. She seemed to understand this without being told, and she filled the silences comfortably without requiring him to perform. He noticed things. He noticed that she sent him pictures of food she was eating when it was interesting, with a one-line caption. He noticed that she remembered things he mentioned offhand and brought them up later in ways that showed she had actually been listening. He noticed that she did not ask about his business beyond general interest, but the way she didn't ask was different from the way most people didn't ask, which was fear. She didn't ask because she was giving him room, and he felt the difference. One Friday, Sio Yan called Adise herself. She had gotten the number from his phone, which he had stored there, and she used his phone when he was in the shower. He came out to find her sitting on the couch talking. "She's telling me about a girl at school." Adise's voice came through the speaker. Eun-woo stood in the doorway. Sio Yan looked up at him with enormous guilt-free eyes. "Hi, Appa. I'm using your phone." "I see that. Adise is helping me with a problem." He sat down slowly. "And what is the problem?" "This girl at school says my dad is scary," Sio Yan said seriously. "Your dad is scary," Eun-woo said. "He's not scary," Adise's voice said firmly through the phone. "He bought a very large pink rabbit on a Tuesday. That is not a scary man." "I am trying to maintain my reputation," he said toward the phone. "Sorry," she said. "Not possible." Sio Yan listened to this exchange and looked deeply satisfied. "See, Appa. She knows you." He took his phone back from Sio Yan gently. "I'm going to give her her own contact in your name," he told Adise. "She has my number anyway now," Adise said. "Yes." She took it. "Resourceful child. Don't encourage her." "I'm absolutely going to encourage her." He sighed, but it was not a real sigh. It was the kind that meant something else entirely. One afternoon in October, he asked her if she wanted to come with them to the mall on Saturday. Not dinner, not something formal. Just the mall, because Sio Yan needed winter clothes and he needed to take her, but she always turned it into an event, and he found it easier with backup. "You're using me as reinforcement," Adise said on the phone. "I am," he said, not pretending otherwise. "I respect the honesty." "What time?" They met at the water tower place at 11 in the morning, and Sio Yan arrived already having opinions. She wanted the pink boots. She did not want the sensible navy ones. She wanted the coat with the fur on the hood, not the warmer coat without the fur. She wanted the sparkly barrettes, all of them, in every color, even the ones that were duplicates. Eun-woo stood in the middle of the children's section, holding the sensible navy boots and looking at his daughter the way generals look at terrain that has gone wrong. Adise crouched beside Sio Yan and looked at both pairs of boots seriously. "Okay," she said. "Here's the deal. The pink ones are beautiful. Nobody is debating that. But they don't have a good grip on the bottom, and Chicago is about to get icy, and you know what happens on ice. You fall," Sio Yan said. "You fall. And it hurts. And then you can't go ice skating because your ankle hurts." Sio Yan's eyes went very wide. "I can't go ice skating?" "You love ice skating," Adise said. Sio Yan looked at the pink boots for a long grieving moment. Then she looked at the navy ones. "Can we get the fur coat at least?" "Absolutely," Adise said immediately. Sio Yan picked up the navy boots herself and marched toward the register. Eun-woo looked at Adise. "Ice skating," he said quietly. "She mentioned it in October on the phone," Adise said. "I remember things." He looked at her for a long moment. She was already moving toward the register after Sio Yan, talking to the girl about what color scarf would go with the fur coat, and his chest was doing the thing again, the quiet, dangerous thing, and he stood there for a moment just letting it. Then he followed them. By the time they were done with clothes, Sio Yan had the fur coat, the sensible boots, 4 pairs of socks with animals on them, 2 scarves which she could not be talked down from, 1 set of barrettes, because Adise negotiated her from all of them to 1 set by agreeing to buy her a hot chocolate, and a small stuffed penguin she found near the checkout that she named Lake after Lake Michigan, because she was a child who named everything after Chicago. Eun-woo paid for everything without discussion. Adise looked at the total and then looked at him. "You didn't even flinch," she said. "Why would I flinch? That was a significant number." "She needed a coat," he said simply. Adise tilted her head and studied him for a moment. "You do this all the time, don't you? You just quietly spend on the people you love." He did not answer. "It's not a bad thing," she said. "I'm just noting it." "Are you noting it because you also love spending?" he said, because he had paid attention to her too, and he had clocked the way her eyes moved across shop windows. She looked caught. "I have no idea what you're talking about," she said. Sio Yan appeared between them holding her hot chocolate in both hands. Appa, can we go look at the jewelry store? Adise's head turned immediately toward the jewelry store at the end of the hall. Eunwoo looked at both of them. No, he said to Adise. I didn't say anything, she said. You were about to. Sio Yan was already walking toward the jewelry store. Adise followed and then turned around to look at him with an expression of complete innocence. He walked after them and stood inside the jewelry store for 20 minutes while Sio Yan tried on rings that were too big for her fingers and Adise studied a gold chain with a pendant quietly, not picking it up, just looking. He watched her look at it. He memorized which one it was. He went back the following week and bought it and did not tell anyone. He kept it in the box in his nightstand. He was not yet sure what he was going to do with it. He just knew he wanted her to have it. That was the day he admitted to himself, quietly and with his eyes open, that he had fallen. She had not chased him. She had not tried. She had simply been herself, which was warm and direct and funny and full, and she had loved his daughter without being asked to, and she had seen him, not his suits and not his reputation and not the tattoo, but him, and she had not been afraid. He picked up his phone and typed, "Are you free this weekend?" Her reply came back in 2 minutes. "Depends on the plan." He typed, "Something that involves the two of us. No child chaperone this time." A pause. Then, "Eunwoo, is this you asking me out?" He typed, "Yes." 3 dots appeared and disappeared twice. Then, "About time." He smiled. He did not smile in front of many people. He smiled at his phone in his empty office, and it was real and it was his. He typed, "Saturday. I'll pick you up." She sent back a single emoji. A small star. He saved it. He did not delete it. He looked at it once more before he put the phone down and went back to the paperwork that kept this whole dangerous world running, and for the first time in a long time the paperwork felt like something that had an end. Saturday arrived cold and bright the way Chicago Octobers do, like the city had decided to be beautiful one last time before winter arrived in full force. He picked her up at 7 in the evening, and when she came out of her building, she was wearing a rust-colored coat that hit just above the knee and her hair was out again, different this time, stretched and twisted into a halo around her face. And he sat in the back of the car and watched her walk toward it and told himself to breathe normally. She got in and settled beside him and immediately said, "You look very serious for a Saturday." "I always look like this," he said. "I know. I'm telling you it's okay to not look like that sometimes." He looked at her. She looked back at him, perfectly comfortable. "Where are we going?" she said. "Dinner first. Then I thought we'd walk the Riverwalk if you wanted." "It's October." "It's a good October," he said. "Not too cold yet." She considered this. "Okay, but if I freeze, it's your fault." "I'll manage that," he said, and the way he said it made her smile turn inward, like she was keeping it for herself. They went to a small restaurant in River North that he liked because it was quiet and the food was exceptional and the lighting was low enough that nobody bothered anyone. They sat across from each other and ordered, and she looked at the menu for a moment and then put it down and looked at him. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Yes." "The Navy. Did you love it?" He thought about it properly before answering, which she appreciated. "Yes," he said. "I loved what it was supposed to be. The structure. The purpose. The idea that what you were doing mattered. And it stopped being that?" "Other things became more urgent," he said carefully. She watched him for a moment. "You don't have to explain," she said. "I'm just trying to understand you. Not your business, not your history. You." He looked at his water glass. Then at her. "I know," he said. "That's why I'm answering." She reached across the table and touched the tattoo on his neck, just briefly, one finger tracing the edge of the anchor. He went very still. "This one means something specific, doesn't it?" she said. "Yes." "You don't have to tell me what." "Not yet," he said. "But eventually." She withdrew her hand and settled back in her chair. Okay, she said. You're very patient, he said. I'm Nigerian, she said. We are born with patience, and then life removes it slowly. I have some left. He almost smiled. What removes it fastest? People who are late, she said immediately. And bad faith. And overcooked rice. She counted these on her fingers with great seriousness. You were on time tonight. You seem like a good faith person. I haven't eaten your rice yet. 3 for 3 so far, he said. So far, she agreed. They ate dinner and the conversation moved the way it did when two people are past the early performance of it and into the actual thing, moving between serious and light without warning and without effort. She told him about growing up in Enugu with her grandmother, who had an opinion about everything and delivered each one without pause. He told her about his father, who had built everything Unwoo now ran, and how he had sat him down when Unwoo was 22 and explained the inheritance with the tone of someone passing on something valuable rather than something complicated. Did you know then what you were getting into? She said. I knew, he said. I thought I could manage it differently than he did. And can you? A pause. I'm trying, he said. She nodded once and moved on, and he felt the thing in his chest again, that thing she did where she heard the weight of what he said without making him carry it in front of her. After dinner, they walked to the river walk, and the city was quiet the way it gets on cool weekend evenings. A few couples, a jogger, the lights from the bridges reflecting on the dark water. She walked beside him, and he did not reach for her hand, but he was aware of every inch between them. She stopped to look at the water. This city, she said quietly. I've been to so many places, and I always come back to this one. Why? It doesn't perform, she said. It's just itself. Big, and a little rough, and very beautiful. She looked at him. I understand why you chose it. I was born here, he said. Still a choice, she said. You could have left. He looked at the water. There are things here I can't leave yet, he said. And then, more quietly, and now more things. She heard that. He saw her hear it. She didn't make it into something loud. She just stood there beside him and let it settle. He reached into the inside pocket of his coat and took out the small jewelry box. She looked at it. I went back, he said. The week after the mall. You were looking at it. She opened the box slowly. The gold chain with the pendant sat there, small and exactly right. She looked at it for a long moment. Unwoo, she said. You don't have to wear it tonight, he said. I'm absolutely wearing it tonight, she said, and took it out of the box and held it toward him. Help me. He fastened it around her neck, and his fingers were steady because he had studied them, and she stood still with her hair up and the back of her neck bare, and the moment was very quiet. When it was on, she turned around and looked down at the pendant. It's perfect, she said. I know, he said. I watched you look at it. She looked up at him with something that was not quite composed. You watched me look at a necklace for a week and then went back and bought it, she said. Yes. And kept it in your nightstand for how long? About 3 weeks. She pressed her lips together. Unwoo. What? Nothing, she said. Just Unwoo. He looked at her face and she was looking at his, and the river was very quiet and the city was very tall around them, and he stepped forward and she did not step back, and he kissed her. Gently, with both hands not quite touching her, just the kiss itself, and she kissed him back, and it was real and warm and nothing at all like performance. When they separated, she looked at him steadily. I've been watching Korean dramas since I was 12 years old, she said. I know, he said. You told me. I did not expect this to happen to me in real life. Neither did I, he said honestly. She laughed, and it was the loud real laugh, and it went up into the cold Chicago air and stayed there. He walked her back to her building later and stood at the door. Call me tomorrow, she said. Sunday morning, he said. You'll be cooking. I'll be cooking, she confirmed. You can talk to me while I make jollof. I don't know what that is, he said. I know, she said. That's a problem we're going to solve. She went inside. He stood on the pavement for a moment. Then he walked back to the car, and the driver very professionally did not say anything, and Eunwoo sat in the back seat of his very expensive car in his very complicated life, and looked at the city lights, and felt something he had not felt in a very long time. He felt like something good was happening. Sio Yan knew something had happened before he told her. She came to breakfast the next morning and looked at his face and said, "You went somewhere nice last night." "I went to dinner," he said. "With her," she said. Not a question. "With Adise," he confirmed. Sio Yan poured her cereal with the gravity of a person receiving news she had already planned for. And nothing. "We had dinner. And?" He looked at her. "And we walked by the river." Sio Yan's spoon stopped. "Appa, did you hold her hand?" "I gave her a necklace." Sio Yan's mouth fell open. "You gave her a necklace? Eat your cereal." "Appa." She was standing up now, which was not how cereal was eaten. A necklace is very serious. A necklace is like a very big thing. She was gesturing with her spoon. "Sit down," he said. "Is she your girlfriend now?" "Sit down." "Appa, sit." He pointed. She sat. But she was vibrating. He looked at his coffee. "I don't know yet what she is," he said honestly. "But she is important." Sio Yan looked at him with the fullness of all 6 years of her experience. "She is your girlfriend," she declared. "I know it." "You know nothing," he said. "I know everything," she said serenely, and went back to her cereal. He called Adise at 10:30, and she picked up on the second ring with the sound of oil hitting a pan in the background. "I'm making eggs," she said. "Talk to me." "Sio Yan says you're my girlfriend," he said. A pause. "And what do you say?" "I say I'd like to ask you properly." The oil was quieter now, like she'd turned it down. "Okay," she said. "Will you be with me?" he said. Not casually. Properly. A moment. "Yes," she said. "I will be with you properly." "Good," he said. "Good," she said, and turned the oil back up. The months that followed were the best months Eunwoo had had in years, and he was aware of this while they were happening, which was a kind of luck he did not take for granted. Adise moved through his life like she had always been planning to be in it. She came to the apartment on weekends, and she and Sio Yan had standing breakfast rituals that developed without anyone designing them. Sio Yan would bring her drawings to show. Adise would give each one serious, critical attention. Eunwoo would make tea and occasionally offer opinions that both of them would override. She cooked for them once a month, and the first time she made jollof rice the apartment smelled different for hours, warm and deep and full, and Sio Yan ate 3 servings and declared it her favorite food, which she said very loudly in Eunwoo's face because he had only eaten 2. "She has better taste than you," Adise told him from the kitchen. "She's 6, he said. "And already ahead of you." Sio Yan pointed at him triumphantly. He pretended to be offended, which neither of them believed. He met her friends one evening at a dinner that had been arranged as a double date. Her friend Adise was there with her husband, a Nigerian man named Femi who worked in finance and had a laugh that arrived before he did. They went to a restaurant in the West Loop, and the table was small and the food was good, and Femi spent the first 20 minutes deciding what Eunwoo was like and the next hour apparently deciding he liked him. "You're quiet," Femi said at some point, not accusingly, just observationally. "Yes," Eunwoo said. "Means you're listening," Femi said. "That's rare." "Adise, I like him." "Thank you," Adise said drily. "She was nervous before you arrived," Adise said to Eunwoo. Adise put her fork down. "Adise, I'm just saying. You're saying too much." "She was nervous," Adise continued pleasantly. "She called me 3 times. She wanted to know if the restaurant was impressive enough. She had 3 outfit options, and she sent pictures of all of them." "I am going to not be your friend anymore," Adise said. Eunwoo looked at Adise. She was looking at her plate with the focused energy of a woman who was not going to give him the satisfaction of meeting his eyes right now. "You were nervous," he said to her. I was not nervous, she said to her plate. You sent 3 outfit pictures. I was being thorough. Adise. She looked up. He was looking at her with something quiet and warm that she could not argue with. Fine, she said. A little. Femi slapped the table gently. See? Good man. He made her nervous. That means it's real. Adise raised her glass. To real things. They all raised their glasses, and Eunwoo looked at Adise over the rim of his, and she was smiling at him with her whole face. And the restaurant was warm, and the company was good, and he could not remember the last time he had sat at a table feeling simply glad to be somewhere. There was one evening, deep in winter, when it almost broke. Not between them. Between him and everything else. There had been a meeting that went wrong, a man in the organization who had gotten close enough to something Eunwoo could not protect, and the call came at 11 at night and he had to leave. He told Adise only that something had come up and he'd call her in the morning, and she said okay, and he heard something in her okay that was not quite okay, and when he came back 48 hours later and called, she answered on the first ring. Are you safe? Was the first thing she said. Yes, he said. A breath. Okay. I can't tell you. I know you can't, she said. I'm not asking. I'm just confirming you're safe. He was quiet for a moment. You're not going to ask? No, she said. But I need to say one thing. Say it. I am not going anywhere, she said. I chose this with my eyes open. I don't love the not knowing, but I can live with it because I trust you. What I can't live with is you deciding for me that it's too much and leaving before I've had a chance to decide that myself. Do you understand me? He sat with that for a moment. Then, yes, I understand you. Good, she said. Now tell me you ate something. I ate. Something real? Not coffee. Real food. Good. Call Sio Yan in the morning. She's been asking me where you are, and I've been telling her you're on a work trip. What did she say? She said okay, and then she showed me 4 drawings she made of you in different outfits. He exhaled. I'll call her first. Good night, Eunwoo. Good night, he said, and he sat alone in the quiet of his office and felt the weight of everything he was carrying and below it, steadier than it, the fact of her. Spring came slowly that year in Chicago, the way it always does, grudgingly, with cold air still mixed in even in April. One morning in April, Eunwoo came to breakfast and Sio Yan was already at the table with a piece of paper and a very determined expression. What are you making? He asked. A list, she said. Of. She held it up. At the top it said, things for the wedding. Below it were, cake, flowers, a pink dress for me, the big hall, her hair, music that is fun. Eunwoo sat down slowly. Sio Yan, he said. I'm just being prepared, she said. We haven't talked about a wedding. She looked at him with 6-year-old patience. You should talk about it. He looked at the list. You wrote her hair on the wedding list. Because she has to have her hair out, Sio Yan said very seriously. Like at the gala. That was important. He pressed his lips together. I see. Appa, she said. Do you love her? He looked at his daughter's small, serious face. Yes, he said. It was the first time he had said it out loud, and it landed clean and true. Sio Yan nodded, satisfied. She went back to her list and added, big dress for her. Then she held up the list again. You should show her this. I'm going to handle it myself, he said. Okay, she said. But don't wait another year. He went that same week to a jeweler that his family had trusted for decades, a quiet man in Wicker Park who made things by hand and asked no questions. He had something specific in mind. Not understated. Adise loved big things. She loved gold. She loved presents. She had pointed at things in shop windows with a kind of pure unashamed joy that he found completely wonderful, and he was not going to give her something small. He told the jeweler what he wanted. The jeweler looked at him. That's significant, the jeweler said. Yes, Eunwoo said. It should be. He picked it up 3 weeks later, And it was everything he asked for, a wide gold band with a large center stone and smaller stones along the sides, the kind of ring that was not quiet about itself, the kind Adise would see from across a room. He kept it for 2 weeks. Then one Sunday morning she was at the apartment, cooking, as she had started to do most Sundays, and Sio Yan was helping her, or more accurately following close behind her and handing her things. And the kitchen smelled like something Eunwoo did not have a name for except good. He came in and stood in the doorway. "Come taste this," Adise said, holding a spoon toward him without turning around, knowing without looking where he was. He crossed the kitchen and tasted from the spoon and stood very close behind her. "Good," she said. "Good," he said. She started to turn, and he was already reaching into his pocket. She turned and saw the box. She went completely still. "Sio Yan already has a wedding list," he said. Adise's mouth opened. "She has the venue and the flowers and a note that says your hair must be out," he continued. "Eunwoo, I'm asking you," he said. "Not because of the list. Because I have not been this myself since I was very young, and it is because of you, and I want you to be my wife." Adise put both hands over her mouth. Sio Yan appeared from the other side of the counter where she had been very quietly waiting. She had known. She had known for 2 weeks. She had been storing this information with the discipline of someone twice her age. "Open it," Sio Yan whispered loudly. Eunwoo opened the box. Adise made a sound that was not a word. She looked at the ring, which was exactly the kind of ring she would have chosen for herself if she had been choosing, large and gold and present, and then she looked at him and her eyes were very full. "Yes," she said. "Yes, of course yes. Why would I ever say anything other than yes?" He put it on her finger and it fit. Adise looked at her hand and then started to laugh, the real laugh, the loud one, and she pulled him in and hugged him, and then Sio Yan was hugging both of them from the side, and the kitchen still smelled like Sunday, and the city outside was beginning its slow green return.